Well,
That's
I
probably
couldn't,
true.
and I'm not. You and I are on the same page, Todd, on that. I'm not a TikTok guy either. I'm like,
I'm talking about things I don't know or understand, so I should probably stop. So you have been doing video and broadcasting for, at least 23, 24 years, starting at Bloomberg as an anchor. You worked at The Onion, which is probably a whole story unto itself. I'm sure you get a lot of interesting inquiries at dinner parties about that.
Todd, all these years of legit work, and people just want to know about The Onion.
Of course. Right. Well, as soon as you drop that, that's all anybody's going to want to talk about, right? But don't worry, we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that, even though I'm dying to. We don't need to talk about that.
You can.
You've done a lot of things, and most recently, you've started a company called Vidafair, which is a pay-per-stream video platform to help creators monetize their content fairly, hence the fair part. So you've been doing this a very long time. You've seen a lot of different models, from paid advertising funded broadcasting to these large streaming platforms like YouTube, to the more independent directly creator monetized platform that you've created. So I'd love to know what you have seen over the course of your career here in video consumption trends, and then later we can talk about the monetization trends. But what have you seen happen? Because even just very recently, maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, I have been feeling a lot of pressure just on our end in the way that we handle content marketing for ourselves at our digital agency to be putting video out into the world. For example, it was just the last season on this podcast that we really started to focus on the video aspect of it. Before that, I could just very pleasantly hang out in my pajamas and record a podcast. But now I have to have, a ring light and a background and all of that because it's going to show up on YouTube. And we actually get a lot of engagement on the video side of things. And, I wouldn't say less on the audio side of things, but YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. So right. Video is a big, big deal. And I'd love to know just what you've seen change over those years and where you think it's at today.
I mean, while there, I guess, for one thing, one size does not fit all. So let's start there. But I do think if you're going to look at trends, certainly video is exploding everywhere. I mean, the word podcast used to just mean audio. Then for a while, there was this transitional phase where people say, yes, I have a podcast, but there's also a video version. Now they don't bother making that distinction. It basically just means video. And they may release a audio-only version of their work in various ways, from Apple Podcasts to all the other platforms that do that. But I find myself that even when there's something with both video and audio version, and I'm in my car and I'm really just putting it on the Bluetooth and driving, and I'm not watching it, I still default to YouTube. I still default to the video version. This is look, I noticed in my own life when I would look for some sort of tutorial about something. Like there was a day when I would go to Google and pull up a text instruction of how to, for example, change the oil on my Kawasaki Vulcan 900 motorcycle. And I would pull up text from a Google search. And then at some point, without me realizing it, I just started going to YouTube and typing in the same search terms. And I would see a video of how to change said oil on said motorcycle. And I just think it's a picture tells 1,000 words. It's an easier way to, often the case that there's that they will explain. They'll in a video you'll hear someone say, for those just listening, what my guest just did was point his head and pull his finger or something. They'll offer an audio explanation in case someone is not seeing it. But I think that video is a way to deliver information that's increasingly popular. And I know for me, from my own point of view, while I learn mostly through hearing more than seeing, like I basically learn through talking and listening. I would rather listen to someone say something. I would still also like the video while they're talking. So Yes, and in fact, in the case of our own startup Vidafair, which is a platform designed to help people be able to make money at a fair price from their work, we launched as a independent film platform, but I see no reason why our growth model shouldn't be all kinds of other video, from cooking classes to we have a stock advisor guy who's like Rick talking about a certain stock, to just anything you would otherwise see on YouTube. Seems to me ought to be part of the monetization space as well.
It's to your point about how people who do these podcasts have to describe anything visual that happens. It seems like one of the transformations that's happened over the past, I don't know, let's say 5 years, is that podcasting has gone from being a medium to being a format. Meaning, like, it used to be an audio medium in the sense that television is a medium, radio is a medium. It was limited by a device. It's limited by the senses. There's some kind of specific limitation to it, or I guess limitation is the word. But instead, it's shifted to this, well, no, it's not limited by a certain device or a certain context in which you experience it. It's instead the like a certain expectation that you have around like what it's going to be like. Yeah, it's just sort of audio centric. And it could be a bunch of people sitting around, sofas with mics in their faces rather than mics hovering above them off camera. Or maybe it's like an audio first way of telling stories, and that's what makes it a podcast. Or maybe it's actually a radio show, but it's delivered to you in a what's the word that they used for a while? Instead of being broadcasted, it was time shifted, I think was the phrase that people
Okay.
used for a
Okay.
while.
Yeah, when
You did,
DVRs first came out, people would
yeah,
say,
TiVo and all that, right? Like,
right.
I don't think anybody's thought of that word in a long time. I think that was the word, time shifting. Um, Media theorists probably came up with that, and then it became antiquated very quickly. Um, but one of the things about video that is so fascinating to me is people's expectations around time, the amount of time that you spend watching video, the and the form factor. Like, I personally, I just have this. Maybe it's because I was a film student, and I spent so much time thinking about like, oh, like I want the letterbox version of something. I want the 35 millimeter cut. I want
I
the
thought you.
70
I
millimeter.
thought. I bet he's going for aspect ratio. But go
Yes,
ahead. Yeah, I
exactly.
don't want to stop you. Yeah.
Totally, right? Like I want
Yeah.
that, and yet so much stuff now is shot vertically, which is that turn 90 degrees, and I understand why that is, because it's easier to hold, and like that's
That's
actually
it.
how we hold the phone most of that's
That's
purely
it.
that. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. The eye sees more widely than it does
Mhm.
vertically. That's why
Yes.
movies from the beginning, a movie theater screen was wide from the beginning.
Yep.
It's because we see more left to right than we do up. And quite frankly, left to right is usually more interesting information than up and down, right? If there's a Tyrannosaurus is about to come attack me, it's more likely that I'm going to look to the left or the right before I
That's right.
assess my own safety than the risk is coming from up or down.
So there's this issue of like the aspect ratio is now shifted, and there's been this uh uh when people like on the street are like, oh, hey, can you take a picture of us? Like if you're at a tourist trap, right? Or you're at Disney World or something, and you're taking pictures, and they hate it when you turn the camera, and you do like a landscape, because that's how I like to take pictures, because I want to get the wide shot of stuff, right? And they're
Sure.
like, no, 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 no,
And
do it the other way. Do it the other way. I want it the other way.
yeah, particularly
Always.
if it's like a group of people, if it's several people, so it's really more of a horizontal image. It's really
Yes.
the key aspects of the image are more horizontal in their definition. In fact,
That's
literally
right.
yesterday there was somebody. I was at an event. They had this. It was a book release party. They had this horizontal thing where people were signing, I was friendly with the author. His name is Corey DeAngelis. It's a great book called The Parent Revolution. Anyway, they were going to take a picture of this poster that had all the signatures, which was horizontal, and they were taking a vertical image of the horizontal poster. I just had to be like, no, no, no. Like I had to just at that point be like, no, you could turn the camera sideways because the image you want to capture is sideways.
I know. Like I feel like I'm grumpy when I when this bothers me, but there's just something has shifted in people's consumption patterns around this, and it has something to do with things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and like people's expectations around media consumption, video consumption has something to do with that, right? And then also, as I mentioned earlier, the people's I don't want to say attention span because I think that's kind of like overplayed and a little insulting. It has nothing to do, I think, with attention span, but there is something about people just expect shorter form media, period. And I don't just want to write it off as attention span because I feel like that's cheap, but there's something else going on there.
Yeah, what you think that's sort of insult, like it's like a curmudgeonly older person's framing that's somehow missing some deeper truth to why it's. I mean, no one likes to waste time. No, we all like things that are succinct and they don't have a lot of filler, right?
Yes.
So
yes, I think that's it. I think it's curmudgeonly to say like, oh well, kids these days they only like their 7-second videos. I think that everybody likes 7-second videos. I think it has nothing to do with like, I don't think it's a generational thing, but there is something about, I think it has to do with apps and their ultra optimization of engagement and advertising, and that they have pushed and optimized for this over and over again. And they have forced people into this habit and reinforced and have now set a new expectation. I don't think it's that people actually like it. I think it's that people have come to expect it to be that way. And now if it's not that way, it's wrong. I think that's what it's become.
Well, my take on what what I was getting from what you said is that it's if something is and there are, of course, Joe Rogan has the biggest podcast, is 3 hours, 3 hours. I would never dream of advising, with all of my, alleged media experience, I would never say, hey, Joe, let me advise you. You should go 3 hours every show. Like, it sounds insane. And yet, who am I now to tell him? So, but
and people will binge 6, 8, 12-hour shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime. I mean, long form is in for sure. So it doesn't really have to do with like attention span, right?
Right. And so, but what I was think you were leading to is an idea I hadn't thought about before, which is the idea that if you just watch a 3-hour long podcast, you are not being reinforced that what you really love is TikTok. You're actually just focused on that one creator who created whatever. Maybe it's an epic long movie, and you're just into that movie, and you walk away saying, "Oh, that XYZ movie was amazing." You don't feel some sort of allegiance or affinity for even psychological predilection to select that app, any particular app again, because a bunch of apps could have delivered that same 3-hour long thing. So you really kind of think, oh, I liked that 3-hour long content. So I think, in addition to maybe the fact that short form does a better job of engaging us with, saving our wasted time. Like if we don't like something, we move past it quickly, and it's like quick. So it might be more engaging, but it also might be a better branding strategy for an algorithm, because we want if I'm the TikTok executive, I want my algorithm to be the star, really, not one long piece of content.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting, because I think to restate what you're saying here, in the case of, let's say, the TikTok experience, where you're being fed a bunch of, less than 10-second video things, rapid fire, one after another, scroll. You as the viewer your allegiance is not to a particular creator. and experiencing what they're doing, your allegiance is to the experience of the app itself. Your allegiance is to TikTok and the machine it's created and the experience that however long you're in the TikTok world is. That's your allegiance, in the same way that
That's what
maybe
says. At least that's what they want it to be. At least that's
yes,
what they want your allegiance to be. Right.
yes. Whereas a long form piece of content, your allegiance is to that long form piece of content because you're sitting in that thing for 2, 3, however many hours. That's very interesting. Yeah, because how many people could really name, like, if you're really pressed for it, like, name, like, I say this as somebody who spends no time whatsoever on TikTok, and so I'm probably wrong about this. How many people could name, like, who are your 5 favorite TikTok creators? Like, I bet some people, now that I say that out loud, I bet a lot of people can name 5 TikTok creators.
But a
That's
lot
probably
couldn't,
true.
and I'm not. You and I are on the same page, Todd, on that. I'm not a TikTok guy either. I'm
So
like,
I'm talking about things I don't know or understand, so I should probably stop. But
well,
anyway, that's so it is interesting then in terms of video consumption that it could be that we're now seeing, because long form is in, short form is in. People love all kinds of video and all kinds of formats in all kinds of aspect ratios, right? There's something for everybody. You said even at the top of the interview, like, there's something for everybody, right? And that in some cases, people's allegiance is to the creator, and in some cases, people's allegiance is to the app itself.
yeah, the shorter the content, the more the allegiance is to the app, is what I was arguing. And interestingly, even me, when I'm picking YouTubes to watch, I spend a lot of time watching YouTube. If it's too short, I won't watch it. And if it's too long, I won't watch it. I kind of, for me, a sweet spot is sort of an 8 to 25-minute YouTube for some reason. Not that there aren't particular things I'm deeply interested in that I rabbit hole, but often I find myself, not choosing a YouTube because it's too short or too long.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. If something's like 4 minutes, I kind of think like doesn't seem like there's a lot going on here, especially if it's purporting to be something that's imparting some kind of knowledge that is trying to be sort of documentarian in some kind of way. It's like, I don't think you're really sharing anything where, how could you possibly be doing any kind of research in 4 minutes? I just don't think that that's really possible. Anyway, yes. Well, let's talk about content monetization, because behind
and I've got a perfect segue for that. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
Yes, go ahead.
But we went to a conference called VidCon where our company Vidafair had a booth, a big giant booth we paid for, and had a breakout session, and had a bunch of staff there and spent a lot of money on the whole thing. It was a giant waste. I've got to tell you, we might have burned that money in a fireplace and at least gotten some warmth out of it. This was in 2023, and and this is the tie into what you're saying. The reason it was a waste is because my last experience at VidCon had been 2019, when it had been, in my opinion, largely a YouTube conference. VidCon. In what it seemed to me that from 2019 to 2023, it had turned into a TikTok conference. And as a result, was no longer relevant to us because the monetization world is not a world for extremely short form content. People will not, and I would argue probably should not, pay for extremely short form content. It's just not the world we play in. It's not the world I spend that much time in myself, but it certainly is not a monetization style of video.
Well, because I assume that the content creators on super short form platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts are not trying to make money off the video. They're trying to build a following, because they're then doing influencer stuff and product placement and sponsorships and building their personal brand on the side. And that's where they make their money, right?
Of course. And not only that, but they'd be crazy to try to monetize a 1 minute video. No one's going to pay for that.
No.
So so that's why it doesn't. These are part of launching a startup like we have to help people monetize content. It's like thinking about and it's not just duration. There are a lot of other certain kinds of content people naturally. I mean, just to start with the lowest hanging fruit, something like a Hollywood movie, people be like, oh, okay, I'll pay for that. That's a Hollywood movie. But I'm not going to go pay for, a bunch of like, kids dancing, that might,
Hmm.
a video of that, because I just don't feel like that's something that I ought to pay for. And
And there's
and that's
also
it. So
so
I think
much of that.
sure, and especially short form is so much of that. But even in a longer form context, there's certain styles of content that people, like it could be I don't know, it could be an hour of a skateboard guy. People are probably not going to pay for an hour of watching a skateboard guy. And even though some of those are very popular,
Hmm.
on YouTube, but an hour that's either some of these other things, like either from an independent film to a stand-up comedian doing an hour-long set,
Hmm.
and you really think the person is funny, and like that's much more. Oh, that style of content I would pay for. It seems to just there are expectations. Sometimes I think illegitimate, and other times legitimate expectations around both duration and style of content that either should be something I be asked to pay for, or it's inappropriate to ask me to pay for.
So what kind of content is most successful on Vidafair? Like the videos that creators are not just the videos that like earn the most revenue for the creators, but that are like most sustainable for the creators. Are there certain genres that are working well, certain types of performance? Like what's most successful on your platform?
We launched as an independent film platform because we kind of had to launch somehow. The goal
Hmm.
is eventually to become kind of a YouTube that's a pay-per-view YouTube where anyone can upload, like I was saying before, any style of content from, someone could do, like a yoga teacher could do a series, or a fix-it guy could be doing, carpentry, or it could be any kind of videos. And we want to eventually be kind of the monetization YouTube. But we couldn't. We had to launch with something, so we picked independent film as a genre, and I think that
Hmm.
was a good place to start because it's well, not only does it resonate with people as the kind of video that they're more comfortable paying for
Oh, of course.
than my skateboard guy,
Yeah.
but also the fact that in particular short films have almost nowhere to go, um, and so we offered there's a whole world of short films that are, every year there are 10 short films that are nominated for Academy Awards. I,
Yeah.
I have a feeling that if I were to go back the last 10 years, so that would be like 100 films. Every year there's 5 documentary shorts nominated for an Oscar and 5 narrative shorts nominated for an Oscar. So 10 per year times 10 years is 100 films. You probably haven't heard of any of them, all 100 of them, and they're all Academy Award nominated. And
Yeah.
so the point is there is some really great work that can't be monetized. Go to any film festival, ask any filmmaker. That's a thing that everyone kind of says. Yeah, you're a short film that you do, no matter how good it is, you can't make a penny off of it. And so I
Mhm.
saw this as a filmmaker myself, going to festivals, and thought, well, this shouldn't be this way. There ought to be, as long as the price is fair and low, why can't there be a way where a supporter of somebody ought to be able to pay uh, a small amount and then to get the content. So that was kind of the genesis of Vidafair and how we got started.
Hmm.
Um, so we kind of started with independent film because I think it made sense to people as a content category that is deserving of some sort of payment, even if it's a small payment. But yeah, the goal I think is to be. I mean, I think comedy would be a bigger growth engine for us because I think that comedy's booming by the stand up comedy's booming in general, as an art form in America, particularly Austin. By the way, like,
That's right.
Austin is considered now like the third city of comedy in America, and maybe higher than that, with a bunch of new clubs in town. And so I think that's and I'll give you one little digression too. Comedians generally feel like social media is part of their job, building an audience by their Instagram usually, and that's doing that every day and releasing funny things that are for free and kind of bigger and bigger audience because, gee, someday I'll be at the Kansas City Comedy Club on tour, or I'll be at the Cincinnati Comedy Club on tour, or the New Jersey Comedy Club on tour. And when I show up, I want to have fans that will just pay for a ticket.
Hmm.
So that gives them a platform to promote a video that's for rent in a way that filmmakers don't see it as their job to build social media followings, so they have less of a way to promote their own content that's for rent than comedians. So anyway, so maybe that was a bit of a digression, but in terms of content categories, yeah, those two were both, I think, very strong for us. And again, cooking show, yes. Yoga teacher, yes. Motorcycle fix a guy, yes. It's really no limits.
Well, the independent film angle makes a lot of sense because there really I I remember even like the independent film channel, right, which is at this point seems kind of uh the fact that like it was on, cable, even I think it was a premium cable channel back in the day. The IFC doesn't even, I don't know if it even exists anymore.
I know.
But I can't.
Which had the Onion show, which we started the interview with. That
Oh
was
my
my
goodness.
Onion. So
Well, there you
I
go.
was in the Onion on YouTube, and then they had 2 seasons on the IFC cable channel, the Onion News
Wow.
Network.
Wow. Well, I don't know if it still exists, but I do remember the last time I heard about it, it seemed like it had strayed pretty far away from the idea of independent film.
Oh, really? Yeah,
So
right.
yes, like
The
so
way
many of
MTV
these,
stopped rubbing music.
yeah, so many of these like 3-letter cable channels have over the years, like, TLC, the Learning Channel, is mostly, 90 Day Fiance and My 600 Pound Life. Not learning much at this point. Uh, well, let's close it out. Let's close it out with this because you have so much experience with video content and where things are headed. I'm curious to know where you think things may be headed with generative AI generated video content. The people I've talked to in this space, there's a lot of people who are just sort of afraid in general. There are kind of like two camps. It seems there are people who think like, oh, this can be really helpful for me. I use it as sort of a I don't know, a collaborative partner. And then there are some people who think like, oh, this thing's going to take my job. I'm curious what your thoughts are, and have you seen some of that stuff start to emerge on your platform?
I wouldn't say that last part. I'll go in reverse order.
Okay.
Okay. Haven't seen that, at least that I know of. Right? You've got to sort of add that. I mean, I like to joke when this topic comes up, like, clearly the robots are going to come kill us all, and so we just what are we going to do? We'll just give up. And I'll also say that I myself have on occasion needed a certain image, and I've kind of looked for it online, and like I'm happy to pay a small, for like a photo service or whatever. It's a license, a photo for online, and I can't find what I want. So then I've done the AI version of the image that's in my head, and you might have a few iterations, but you're like, okay, now that looks good, and then there it is, and you use the AI one. So I mean, I would say that part of the design of AI is to use existing web information as the basis for generating answers to questions that you ask, or even creative things you kind of ask it to do. But I think, therefore, inherently by the design, it can't come up with truly original works of art, because all it has is the existing base of previous ideas as its building blocks. So I mean, maybe that's naive, or maybe it'll be, to wait till 3 years from now when it's 10,000 times smarter than it is today, and I'll be wrong. I don't know. None of us really know. But it's so I guess I'm not afraid of that per se. I think that its impact will be more limited to the realm of a particular little piece that it creates, that it helps you because you have a larger vision for creating something. I did a document. The way I got into this, I did a documentary film about 12, 13 years ago about corruption in public education. And it was kind of the first film of its kind. And no one had ever done a documentary film about this subject matter. I ended up getting 11 city theatrical release, and ended up on Netflix, and it ended up, it was a big part of my life. I toured the country multiple times. I was on TV,
Wow.
dozens and dozens of times, interviewed about education policy because I'd made this film. Well, I mean, I thought that wasn't It was a fairly original idea, and it wouldn't have happened, I think, based through AI.
Huh. There is there's a lot of truth to what you said about how AI the way that AI currently works is built on a giant database of pre-existing work, and that is not only is that just true, period, by design, but it shows up in really obvious ways from time to time, and it's really undeniable. And there are all kinds of ethical questions to wrangle with there. There are, you know, copyright and IP issues to wrangle with. Um, and then there are just, you know, countless. There's that eerie. Um, it isn't quite right feeling. You know, it goes beyond
Oh
uncanny
yeah.
valley. You know, even just the
Oh
output
sure.
of it is just like, oh, there's something about it that just sort of feels like rubbery and strange. And, you know, if you look, you don't have to look that closely, and you start to see that, like, it's things don't quite connect in the right way. And, you know, it's a little subtler now than, like, well, that why does that hand have six fingers, and, you know, things like that. Um, but it is, I mean, they keep showing these demos, and they're impressive, but then, you know, it's revealed, you know, a few days or a week later that, like, oh, they did a lot of work on that before they released it. You know, there was a lot of post production on
Right.
that video, and, you know, they buffed it up quite a bit. So uh I'm, you know, AI video is going to be one of the harder things to really crack, just based on what I've seen. But I mean, I'm in the same camp that, like, human creativity, original human thought is something that's going to take AI a very, very, very long time to try to match and compete with.
If before Albert Einstein published his special relativity paper that I think preceded his general relativity paper, if he'd have gone on AI then and said, "Hey, does this theory of relativity make sense?" The AI then would have said, "No, Albert Einstein, this is wrong. I've searched the existing canon of
That's right.
physics literature, and we have proven
That's
that
right.
you're out of your mind."
It doesn't make
You
sense
know,
because it didn't exist before that. That's right.
right?
That's exactly right.
And so, and I think there's, in other words, a creative analogs to that in terms of story development and character and dialogue. And so, yes, I think that AI quickly can get you up to a maybe above average level of proficiency for creating works, but I don't think it can be great.
Yep. Agreed. Well, Bob, thank you so much for your time. If people want to learn more about Vidafair, where do they go?
Yeah, so Vidafair.com, that's eight letters. So you can think of it's a double entendre, by the way. It means life that's fair, like Vidafair.com. You could spell it that way. Or it also means video affair, vid affair. So, but the point is, and let me just quickly add that, you know, the vision of this was to create a platform. If you had a blank piece of paper and you started from scratch and said, what's the fairest way to monetize video? How would this be designed? Well, you would let people set their own prices, meaning the creators. You would let the creators, pull it down and delete their video or suspend their video at any time they want, so they're not held in by a contract. You would not have subscriptions. Hashtag subscription fatigue, as I like to say. I feel like I'm sick of subscribing. I'm sick of forgetting to unsubscribe to content that I'm no longer watching. Surveys show that an increasing number of people like there may always be a place for the HBOs and the Netflixes of the world for subscription models, but there's also clearly a place for a monetization that's not subscription based, where you can also get discounts by buying a basket of tokens, but it's still a one-time purchase. You don't get a monthly anything. You can get a discount by buying a basket of tokens, or you could just pay purely a la carte and just pay a small price once, and you're supporting an artist. So it was our view that if you built the fairest system for everyone, where it's completely transparent, no advertising, pay a small price, directly support an artist, this should be a place. This should exist, in other words, alongside the subscription platforms, like Patreon, for example, also a subscription platform. There needed to be a way that you can support an artist's work without having to subscribe or get the tiny advertising related YouTube type compensation, which is less than 0.2 of a penny per view either. So that's kind of the concept of Vidafair. And you please also, I would ask people to follow us on Instagram and X and Facebook and download our iPhone app and Android app, etc. But
Cool.
I really appreciate it, though. It was fun talking to you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you so much. I look forward to. I actually have been intending to check out your documentary. I see that it is also available on Vidafair, and it's called The Cartel.
Indeed, it is.
Cool.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you so much.